welcome. I am so excited today on our next episode of Recipe to Revenue. I am here with Paola Pavan from OPC International. Paola is an amazing professional that is in the world of spirits, and especially in the international spirits brands. And she works with a lot of these brands to bring them to the United States. And she just has a wealth of knowledge and expertise about how to do that. So I'm very excited to have you here today, Paola, and to talk about this and talk about brands. In our conversation so far, just shared so much interesting information about the brands that you have worked with, and you have so much knowledge. I'm so excited to have you here today. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me, Leah. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here and to share some of the insights of my job with you and with your audience. As I can tell from my accent, I'm not American. I was born and raised in Italy, and I moved to the US, to New York, 10 years ago. But also before moving to the US, I was already in this sector, mainly with wine in Italy. And then when I moved here through different experience with brands and also with institutional association, like trade association, governments, basically, I gained also the access more to spirits and beverages. And so now my agency, OPC, is a strategic agency for helping international brands coming and expanding in the US market, basically mostly beverage, but on a larger scale, also food and hospitality.
Yeah. And how did you get into this industry to begin with?
Well, as I said, in Italy, it's a funny story. I wanted to change my career. Sometimes you have these moments where I'm like, I'm not happy. And I really liked wine. And in the region where I come from, which is Veneto, the region of Prosecco and Amarone, just to give an idea, there's a lot of production and a lot of wineries. So I saw this master degree in marketing and management for the wine sector. And I went to Florence and I studied there. And then I came back.
Beautiful city.
To Veneto, and I started working with wineries and also some project about restaurants and hospitality. So always related to wine.
Yeah.
Then I came to New York because my husband is American, and so that was another adventure. But I was very happy and very lucky to, and this is something also for maybe for the American professional to think about to do an abroad experience as a professional, because when I approached the idea of moving to the US, because of my expertise, I was able to find a job pretty easy. I was able to find somebody that sponsored my visa and that helped me with, basically put me in this path of my career now in the US. So I'm very grateful.
Yeah, you had a really unique experience that I'm sure they were very excited to have you on board and start to work on the US side with that. So then how was that segue from once you were here in the US to then start to thinking about bringing those brands to America that you had been working with?
Well, I started working here with importers. So basically, they were benefiting from my knowledge of the wine itself, from the product wine, and also from the fact that coming from Italy, I had connection, I knew the language, I knew the mindset. And then we will talk a lot about mindset, or not just for Italians, but international brands that comes to the US. One of the most important things to understand is the culture and, how to adapt. But I came here, start working with importers. So their main job was to bring product here and make them successful. And then 3-4 years into my staying in the US, I got an offer from the Italian government, and I became the marketing manager for the promotion of Italian wine and spirits in the whole US. So my job was
amazing
mainly two tasks. One was managing the budget and putting together a plan, a promotional plan for wine and spirits for the US market, and then also consulting companies that wanted to enter in the market or were already in the market and they needed to expand, they needed some advice on how to do it. Sometimes they also had challenges, and they didn't know how to handle them. So in 5 years that I worked for the government, I really saw a variety of cases that then allowed me to 2 years ago to open my own agency and kind of already know some of the answers of what's going on for the international brands in the US.
Yeah. What were some of those challenges that you saw from those brands?
Well, so a lot of people think, like, especially international foreign people, they think that most of the challenges are like, how do I export? What the registration of the label, the formula. A lot of people are, so intimidating in having to submit the formula of their spirits, and they don't understand what is that. So they think that there's a lot of legal and bureaucratic challenges, which they are, but you also have an American partner as an importer in this case to help you navigate those difficulties. So those are not really the difficulties. The difficulties more are, I think, mainly the mindset of who sells to the US, the mindset of thinking that after they sell in, like after they sell to an importer, their job is done. Most of the European producer, maybe also South American producer, and maybe also the American, but they are in the US, so it's easy for them to get distribution. But one of the things that they think is like, I focus on my product. My product is very good. Maybe it wins award. Maybe, it has some kind of reputation, and then my job is done.
It's well known back in Italy. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not like that in the US, because the US is the new market for you. So it's not, you need to help your partner to sell in the market, because unfortunately for our industry, especially because it's very regulated, we need to go through different steps, and we need to convince a lot of people that our product is good. And by the time it gets to the consumer, there's a lot going on. Like, there's a lot of things that you need to do.
A lot of work to do it. Yeah.
And believe me that when I started in this industry, because I was not from the industry, and one of the first things that I did was this master's in marketing and management, I was kind of shocked too, because I'm like, wait, I'm doing marketing for 3-4 people that is in the middle before I can get to the consumer that is really the one that drinks the wine and says, yes, I like it, I will rebuy it again. So how do you know how to get to the consumer while you, in the meantime, you are like using all your focus and all your effort or your investment for the trade people that you have in the middle? So that's amazing. And, and sometimes foreign people, foreign producer, they don't have so many steps when they are in their country or maybe also in Europe. And so they don't understand how much the effort is. And actually, they don't understand also the markups and how the pricing from their exports, from their warehouse to the American consumer develops.
Sure.
So I think
and is that through
most
your
of the
agency, you're guiding them through those processes at OPC?
Yeah, most of the challenges are basically more like mindset and business, understanding, and plus the cultural adaptation of the product and of the storytelling, the marketing, the positioning to the American market.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Have you worked with a brand where it really had to change the story from where it originated to the US market?
So it's funny because in reality, nobody wants to change their stories. Nobody wants to
Right,
really,
yeah.
but
That's emotional. That's,
yeah. But then you get to a point when I had a couple of experience with big brands, with international brands. I can tell you maybe Mionetto, Prosecco, and also the Botanist gin, where
Mhm.
I was in a marketing team, as an advisory, as a consultant, helping
Mhm.
them. Actually, with Mionetto, I was part of the marketing team. They were the company that sponsored me to come to the US, and I'm super grateful for what they did for
Yeah.
me. But I saw that international brands like Mionetto or the Botanist, most of the time they have a global strategy, especially for marketing. And the global strategy gives the guideline to all the countries. But somehow the US always has some exception to the rule.
Nah.
And that was
Always
fun.
has to be a little bit different, right?
Yes, yes. And, I think they can get away with it. Let's say they can get away with it because it's a huge market and it's very strategic, it's very important. So the brands, especially the one that did a process, they scaled, they understood that they're not just a family that kind of try to keep control of everything. These are multinationals. They have global investors, and they're part of big groups, so they also need to give results. And when you want results, you need to go how the market wants you to market the product, not just how you want to market. Of course, you try to keep the positioning, you try to keep the the main values of the brand, but then for the part that is between the consumer marketing and the trade marketing, that's where they change a little, because they need to support the trade. The American trade has some specific way of working. I don't find the right word right now, but they have their characteristics,
They have
and
certain methods that they follow.
yeah. And so that's where they change a little. Like, to give you an example, the advertising and the design for like the consumer advertising, so in magazine, etc. But then when they were talking with the sales force and when they were pushing the product and giving promotions and other incentives, they were a little more American. The same
Okay.
with
That
the
makes sense.
botanists. They were globally, they were pushing a lot the message of the herbs, the territory where it comes from, the kind of small distillery that, where all the people, they are from a tiny island and all the people in the island works in this distillery. I was impressed because in that, from Scotland, they're in that tiny island. So everybody works in distilleries. But when they come to the US, yes, the herbs were important. The production, all the storytelling was important. But then we were pushing also more on the American way of enjoying this stuff.
Yeah. So, you really do have to figure out what's going to resonate with the end consumer at the end of the day. Like, your story is your story, and that has a historic and emotional perspective, but you want sales. So you have to adapt to the different markets. So tell us a little bit more about your work with the Botanist and what were some of the things that you took away from that brand, lessons you learned from it.
Well, that was a interesting project. Actually, it was a funny situation because they had unfortunately one of the brand manager was having some troubles, and they had to take a moment of break, and so they were looking for somebody to jump in and get the keep the ball rolling. So for me, it was interesting because I was coming, the previous job was with the Italian Trade Commission, with the government. And in that role, I was still managing a lot of agencies for, implementing all the strategies that we had for the government. But of course, the government didn't really need to give too much result because we were not promoting a specific brand. We were promoting Italy and, all the categories that we have. So my way of working with agencies was some kind little like laid back. While with the botanists, I'm like, no, this is like, we need to work and we need to get result and we need to
there's an ROI we need to hit here.
And it's a good brand. It's the only brand that was scaling, was pushing a lot, where they wanted to do good. They are really doing good. And they had big budgets. So it was very interesting to see also the other side of the big numbers.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So you really have seen it from all different perspectives, of small brands, big brands.
Yeah, I feel like I always learning, and this is sounds like cliche, but literally, sometimes I get clients or I get project just for me to learn something that I never experienced.
I can relate to that. Absolutely.
So, so that's the challenge, and also the way of working to improve not just your client, but also your company. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that I always say is that if I'm not able to find a solution, I think my network is going to be able to find a solution. And when we present our agency, we always talk in a more like we are a collective. We are more like the point of reference for the international brands, and we are the project manager, let's say, of the whole strategy, and then we use other expert, other professional to go deep in the specific task that we need to create.
To bring those people in. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, to bring in the experts especially for the more specialized parts of this, that bringing the people that have the deep knowledge. And
I think that one of the challenges is also for the international brands is to be able to understand, like, talking about return on investment is always difficult. But as we are in a podcast that is related to a company that raise money and raise capital, like, that investor wants to know what's going on with their money. So the return on investment is not always easy to be calculated, or but on the other side, it's even more difficult when you don't have a point of reference, like you don't have this kind of brand manager that keeps track of everything. And most of the time, this international company doesn't have this, so they spend some money in PR, some money in these, then they ask for a sponsorship. Maybe if they have money, they do also that. But they are not able to see what comes out from all these activities, because they're spreading money in different ways.
All over the place, right?
Yeah. So it's not that it's wrong to spread the money, because of course you need to do the different activities. But if you don't have a person, and usually in a company, they don't have a person that is able to collect all the information, be on site, and see what's going on, talking regularly with the agencies and say, what are the results, then your investment you're not going to get the result that you want from your investment.
Yeah, you need to have that strategic vision. And that's actually a great segue into strategic partnerships too, having, somebody in your role that can bring in those people and bring in those partnerships. But talk a little bit about how strategic partnerships and these types of brands help them achieve their goals?
So in the past, you're naive and you think, like many international producers, that your product is important and is going to be the one that bring the success of your brand also in other countries.
Right.
But then you get to the country and you don't understand anything of what's going on. Like, you're not prepared. Okay. So by seeing some of the biggest brands in the US, international, I see that most of them had a very good American partner that put them on the map. And it's funny because sometimes it happens that brands that are made in other countries, like made in Italy, made in France, like wines or spirits, liqueurs, etc. You dig a little, and you see that in reality, the owners are American.
Right.
So that shows, and I can tell you, like, the first two brands that I can think about, Italian wine brands in the US, they're not owned by Italians.
Oh,
La
really?
Marca
Yeah.
Prosecco, it's made in Italy, but it's from Gallo. So, of course, they are like powerhouse. And there's another brand that is Roscato, which I don't remember right now who is the owner, but is also another big American company in wine.
Yeah.
So why? Because they know what the market likes. They know how the market reacts to the promotion. So that is definitely like, you need to find a right partner to come into the US.
Yeah.
I was actually talking with somebody that create a gin in Italy, and he's American. And I was asking him, how was your journey, etc. Did you work with agencies? Did you speak with Italians to get the story?
Right.
And he's like, no, I did it myself. I was working with big brands in the US. I know what works, and I love Italy. And I went there and I decided my ingredients, and I decided my storytelling, and it did everything by itself. But it was bold. And this is like something that a lot of foreigners don't probably have. It's the boldness of,
Yeah, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to put it out there in the world and use my knowledge and see what happens.
If I'm missing something, I'm going to find it. I'm going to raise the capital. I'm going to find the distributor. I'm going to, and I think that being in the US, of course, helps. So that's why agencies like mine, or, in general, like people having a strategic advisor, if you're not already in the US, to find the right partner and kind of put also the right beginning of the relationship with this partner, because there's also people that find the right partners because maybe they're lucky, the partner goes to Italy, fall in love with the wine or spirits, and they decided to bring it to the US. But then if you don't nurture the relationship in a way that you both understand that you need to adapt to the American mindset in terms of business, and the Americans sometimes need to adapt to the foreigner mindset.
If they need a business partner, they need to learn to work together.
In terms of respecting the quality of the product and the tradition and the pride of this family, because that's the pride that motivates them. It's not the money that motivates them. It's like, I keep talking with people, and a lot of people say, oh, I like drinking my vermouth. Yesterday I was talking about a vermouth producer. I love drinking my vermouth. It's like, can you believe having a life where you produce something that you don't like? that
Yeah. Right.
that you don't like drinking or promoting.
Yeah, that would be hard to stick with.
And but then when it gets too big and your numbers and you have people that are not involved in the production or in the family that promotes your
Mhm.
brand, that pride kind of get weaker, let's say.
Yeah.
Because you know
Yeah,
so
that's an interesting distinction.
there has to be this mutual respect for the American and their way of building a brand and doing business, and for the
Mhm.
international producer for their way of keeping the quality and working on the product. That's the best
Yeah, yeah,
match.
excellent. All right, excellent. So we have a few minutes left. So I wanted to ask you, as you're talking, it made me think of, is market research done differently in the US versus, say, Italy? As you're talking through some of these things, I suspect that maybe it is, but tell me from your experience.
Well, market research is very difficult in general. I think that,
Yeah.
it's one of the, if I could have a magic wand, I really like, right now is getting better, but I really would like to have a place where I can get data like real time.
Okay.
Because most
Yeah.
of the time you don't
Sure.
have that. You can buy a market research from somebody that does that, because of course not every agency is going to be able to collect all the data, etc. So you gather, like when I was working for the government, we had like different suppliers,
Uh-huh.
and then I was aggregating the statistics and doing
Mhm.
brains, trying to analyze what's going on. And one of the things that I was doing a lot, and that's
Mhm.
something that you can do when you are kind of independent, is also to talk a lot with the trade. So I
Right.
always keep like 2 or 3 point of reference in every state where I, make a phone call and say, they always get something from me. So there's always like
Yeah.
some kind of exchange, but
Opinion.
they can give me the real deal. Like they can tell me, Paola, this is what we sell, this is what our competitors sell, this is what the
Yeah.
people drinks, this is what the bars are pushing now, this is what is popular, etc. So you don't really have
Mhm.
numbers in terms of quantity, but you can understand a lot of trends and going on and stuff going
Yeah.
on.
But it's real boots on the ground information, so it's very valuable.
Yeah, I think
All right.
so.
Last question for you. So tell me about just kind of where do you think the industry is going? Some trends or, the things that you're working on now, kind of where do you see them headed?
Well, so it might be like obvious, but I hope and I think I see also that there's a lot of interest in international, in terms also of fusion, let's say, like Americanize some of the trends, or also taking like
Mm-hmm.
international trends and bring it in the US. Like, for example, one of my clients is not actually a beverage company. It's an equipment company, and it's
Okay.
called Eurobar, and basically they
Yeah.
create a bar station with the design, with the structure of the European bar station. That it's a little different than the US. But why
Mm-hmm.
is it interesting in this moment? Is because
So,
the audience, like the drinkers, are asking everything. They can,
yeah.
they can ask a cocktail with coffee, like, espresso martini, that for years and still is like we're talking
Yeah.
about that.
For
Or,
sure.
you're asking juices or something that is like you need, or you
Mm-hmm.
have the gun to make those balls, and it's all about
Right.
appearances, and you have like the bartenders are basically chefs right now. Like they
Sure.
have, they are looking for, especially in big cities like New York, or
Yeah.
other metropolis, they are really looking for something unique that they only can do, and they prepare their own syrups, and there's a lot of
Right.
preparation, there's a lot of inputs
craftsmanship in it.
from the bartenders, and and the sommeliers are looking for super geeky type of grapes that only true producer have in France. So
Yeah.
the thing is that you need to be adaptable, like you need to be flexible in creating different things. And this is something that in Europe is much more a habit. Like you go to an Italian bar and you can have a juice, you can have a coffee, you can have a cocktail, you can have a sandwich, and they are all working in the same space. So one of the thing about these bar station is that they create a say they move the the ice on the side, so you can still cook the ice and you do your your preparation. But then you also have a main working station where you have all your garnish, all your instruments, you have space for everything that right now you don't know where to put. And so then of course it depends on the establishment. It's not going to be like a deep dive bar, a bar for just to go and drink and get some vibe. It's going to be more like a place where you go and you want the experience. You want your cocktail made in a certain way. I was talking with a Japanese bartender a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him what is the difference from when he was working in Japan and now here in New York. And he said, what? When I came to New York and I was, he was working in a very interesting bar. And he's like, I saw people that were coming in the bar and they were waiting 1 hour to get a cocktail done. And in Japan, this is something that would never happen. Like, but then maybe in Japan, they will spend an hour to do the ceremony of the tea. So it depends on where you put your tradition, your priority, your experience, like the thing that you want to experience in the sense of, something that happens to you, some feelings, some,
is watching that cocktail being made part of the entertainment of the night.
Yes. And that's why, Eurobar, for example, being very clean in the design and very, very, it's gorgeous. Like every time I speak with a bartender, they're like, oh, wow. It's like watching a Ferrari passing in front of your car, like a luxury car. The same kind of.
Are there any bars in New York where they've rolled it out so far?
No, right now, the designer Livio Lauro, he's based in Las Vegas, so they have a good amount of establishment in Las Vegas. One of the most famous is the Venetian, that just opened a bar that is inspired from Italy, and so they just use this bar. And then there's another bar that is a tiki bar, so completely nothing related to Europe.
Very different vibe.
That is using it, and that is, oh my god, I forgot the name. It doesn't come. But okay.
Tiki bar in Vegas.
So the trends that I'm seeing is that of people, like American is a country of different cultures and different origins. Every time we walk in New York and we meet a new person, you can tell that they have some kind of, maybe the grandparents were from another country. That doesn't mean you are American. I am American. I have American passport. I feel between the two, and I see that a lot of people has this mix, some kind of influences. And I think that this is something that the country is embracing, and is embracing also in the hospitality, in the food, in the
much more fusion cuisines now.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Paola, thank you so much. This has been so wonderful. You just, again, a wealth of information and knowledge that I'm so excited for everybody to hear and share today. So thank you
Yeah.
from the bottom of my heart for joining with us today. And we will certainly stay in touch, because I'm sure maybe we'll have you back and talk about where you are in a couple months from now.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm here. I'm very happy to have shared some insights with you. One thing that I wanted to say at the end is that whoever look at the or listen to this conversation or look at the video and they are in the industry or they are thinking of, starting something, you need to do your research, but you need to have the passion, and then as we said, find strategic partners that can help you get the money, get the distribution, get
Right.
your message adapt to the market, and you need to believe it. I think that still the American market is like in supermarket, like everybody wants to come here, so
Yeah.
we need
Well,
just to believe it and put the work.
right. Well,
Yeah.
excellent advice. And just last thing, let us know where we can find you, where we're doing people to get in touch if they want to.
Well, I've been lazy, to be honest. I have a website. It's just a landing page for the moment. My email is Paola, Paola, at OPC-international.com. That's also the website. But I think the best way is like LinkedIn. I'm very active in LinkedIn and easy to recognize the face too. So my name is Paola Pavan.
Definitely recommend reaching out to Paola if you have a brand that you're looking to expand in the US. She is the person to contact. So thank you, Paola, so much.
Thank you.